The terror of the galaxy. The Varkshar were the most feared species in the galaxy. A race of towering, armored warriors with razor-sharp claws and eyes that burned like fire. For centuries, they had conquered, enslaved, and destroyed any species that dared to resist them. The weak fell to their blades, and the strong were broken under their rule. No one had ever defeated the Varkshar. No one had even come close. Their war fleets were massive, their warriors ruthless, and their strategy perfect. They believed themselves to be invincible. But soon, they would learn the truth. A new target. In the dark chambers of the Varkshar High Command, Supreme Warlord Xalzur stood before a massive galactic map. His red eyes scanned the planets marked as conquered. Then he focused on a small, insignificant system on the far edge of the galaxy. A minor scouting ship had reported something strange from this system, a species called humans. They were a young race, unknown to most of the galaxy. Their planet, called Earth, was isolated and had no history of war with the Varkshar. Xalzur sneered, another weak species waiting to be crushed. But something bothered him. The report mentioned that the last scouting ship sent there never returned. That was unusual. Even the weakest of species at least sent a distress signal before their inevitable defeat. But here, there was only silence. Xalzur's second-in-command, General Drakkar, stepped forward. "Shall we send a war fleet, my lord? A full invasion?" Xalzur growled. "No, a single fleet is enough. We will make an example of them." The fleet arrives. A Varkshar war fleet, carrying thousands of warriors and weapons capable of turning planets to dust, arrived at the edge of the Sol system. The fleet's commander, Admiral Vrax, was confident. His warriors were already preparing for battle, sharpening their blades, laughing at the thought of crushing a new species. As they neared the human homeworld, a strange thing happened. A message appeared on their screens, written in fluent Varkshar language. "Leave now, or face the consequences." The warriors laughed. The threat? From a primitive race. Admiral Vrax grinned, his sharp teeth glinting under the red glow of the ship's lights. "Foolish humans, let's show them why the galaxy fears us." He ordered his fleet forward, expecting zero resistance. The first warning. But as the Varkshar warships approached Earth's outer defenses, something was wrong. Their long-range scanners malfunctioned. Their communication signals jammed. Then, out of nowhere, human warships appeared. Not many, just a few. But something felt off. The human ships didn't charge blindly into battle like most weak species. They didn't even move. They just waited. Admiral Vrax smirked. Pathetic. He ordered his fleet to open fire. Nothing happened. Every single weapon system on the Varkshar warships failed at the same time. The controls froze. The engines locked. Then the humans made their move. A silent battle. Without firing a single shot, the human fleet disabled an entire Varkshar war fleet. Vrax's warriors panicked. They had never faced an enemy like this. They were used to slaughtering their enemies, not being helpless. Then, a second message appeared on their screens. "This is your last warning. Run." But Vrax refused to surrender. He was a warrior of the Varkshar. He roared in anger, trying to regain control of his ship. That's when the human ship struck. In a precise, coordinated attack, they boarded the Varkshar flagship. Within minutes, human soldiers stormed through the corridors, moving like ghosts. They carried advanced weapons, but what shocked the Varkshar the most was their fighting skill. The humans did not fear them. For the first time in history, the Varkshar warriors felt fear. Captured. The battle was over before it even began. The humans had won. Admiral Vrax, beaten and captured, was dragged before a human officer. His armor was cracked, his pride shattered. He expected the humans to mock him, to celebrate. Instead, the humans simply looked down at him with calm, unshaken eyes. "You're not as scary as you think," the human said. And with that, the terror of the galaxy met its match. First contact goes wrong. The Varkshar High Command had never experienced silence like this before. For thousands of years, every fleet they had sent out had returned victorious. If a ship was lost, at least a distress signal would come through. Screams of the dying, static-filled cries for mercy. But this time, there was nothing. Supreme Warlord Xalzur sat on his throne, his claws gripping the armrests as he stared at the massive war map projected in front of him. The fleet he had sent to Earth was gone. No response. No survivors. No explanation. How is this possible? Xalzur growled, his voice like thunder rolling through the chamber. His generals stood in silence. None dared to answer. The Varkshar had faced every species in the known galaxy, conquering thousands. Some had been weak. Others had been strong. But all had been predictable. The humans, however, were different. They didn't fight like prey. They fought like hunters. The unthinkable decision. Xalzur turned to his second-in-command, General Drekar, his most ruthless and trusted warrior. "Send the Stormbringer fleet," Xalzur ordered. "Crush these humans. Leave nothing but ashes." The chamber fell into a deadly silence. The Stormbringer fleet was the largest fleet in Varkshar history minus 200 warships, 5 dreadnoughts, and an armada of 1,000,000 warriors. It was overkill for a single primitive species. But this time, no one questioned the Supreme Warlord. If an entire fleet had been wiped out, then the humans were more dangerous than they appeared. This was no longer a simple invasion. This was war. The second invasion begins. The Stormbringer fleet emerged from hyperspace on the edges of the Sol system. The Varkshar warriors stood at attention, battle-hungry and eager to avenge their fallen comrades. Admiral Krell, a battle-scarred Varkshar with 100 victories to his name, stood aboard the command deck of the fleet's flagship, the Doomclaw. "All ships, move forward," Krell commanded. "Weapons ready. If they do not surrender immediately, burn their world." The massive fleet advanced toward Earth, a wall of unstoppable destruction. That's when they received their first message. A message from Earth. A deep, calm voice echoed through their communication systems. "This is Earth Defense Command. You have violated human territory. This is your only warning. Leave now or be destroyed." The warriors in the fleet laughed. A warning. From them. Admiral Krell sneered. "Foolish creatures. Let them see what true power looks like." He ordered the fleet forward, weapons primed. But before they could fire a single shot, it happened. The attack that wasn't an attack. Without warning, the entire Varkshar fleet's systems shut down. The massive dreadnoughts, the heavily armed warships, all powerless. Their engines froze. Their weapons deactivated. Alarms blared across every ship. Warriors rushed to control panels, but nothing worked. The fleet had not been attacked. It had simply been turned off. Admiral Krell's eyes widened. What is this? What have they done? Then, a second message came through. "Your weapons belong to us now. Your ships belong to us now. We could kill you all in an instant. But we won't. Yet." A feeling the Varkshar had never known before sank deep into their bones. Fear. The boarding. Before the Varkshar could recover, human forces boarded their warships. Not in drop pods, not in fighters. They simply appeared. Through some unknown technology, human soldiers materialized inside Varkshar ships. Fully armed, fully prepared. The battle should have been in the Varkshar's favor. They were larger, stronger, and born for war. But they never stood a chance. The humans moved like shadows, their weapons silent, their strikes lethal. Varkshar warriors fell before they even knew what hit them. Admiral Krell, still struggling to react, found himself face to face with a human soldier. A normal warrior would have executed him on sight, but the human simply stared. His weapon was at the ready, but he didn't fire. Instead, he spoke. "You don't understand what we are," the human said. Krell bared his fangs. "You are nothing." The human smiled, not in arrogance, not in mockery, but something else, something deeper. "We used to think we were alone," the human said. "Then we found the galaxy." He stepped forward. Krell felt his entire body freeze. "You've spent centuries conquering weak civilizations," the human continued. "But you made a mistake when you found us." Krell snarled. "And what mistake is that?" The human leaned closer. "You assumed we were weak." The aftermath. The battle was over before it even began. The Stormbringer fleet, the pride of the Varkshar, was gone. Some ships were destroyed, others were captured, and the surviving warriors were sent back to the Varkshar homeworld with a message that would change the galaxy forever. It contained only one word: run. Humanity's shocking power. The Varkshar Empire had never known fear. For millennia, they had crushed, conquered, and dominated every species they encountered. They did not negotiate. They did not retreat. They did not lose. But today, they had lost everything. The galaxy reacts. The destruction of the Stormbringer fleet sent shockwaves through the entire galaxy. Every empire, every warlord, every mercenary guild, they all heard the same terrifying rumor. The Varkshar, the apex predators of the galaxy, had been defeated. No one believed it at first. Some called it propaganda. Others thought it was a trick. But then, the survivors returned. From the dark void of space, crippled Varkshar warships limped back to their homeworld. Their hulls were torn apart, their weapons stripped, their warriors broken. They brought a single message from the humans: run. The Varkshar High Command couldn't accept it. Their species had never known defeat. The supreme warlord Salzor himself had spent his entire life leading victorious campaigns, and now he sat on his throne, listening to his warriors whisper of fear. The mighty Varkshar were afraid, and that was unacceptable. The last stand of the Varkshar. Salzor roared in fury, standing up so fast that the chamber shook beneath his massive form. "Silence," he bellowed. His voice echoed through the halls of power. "We are the Varkshar. We do not surrender. We do not flee. We will wipe out these humans for their insolence." Some of his commanders nodded. Others, however, hesitated. Supreme Warlord, one of his high-ranking generals, finally spoke, his voice uncertain. "We lost the Stormbringer fleet. It was our most powerful force. If the humans defeated them so easily, what will happen if we attack again?" Salzor turned toward the general, eyes glowing red with rage. "What are you suggesting?" Salzor growled. The general took a deep breath. "We must speak with them." Silence. Deadly, suffocating silence. No one had ever suggested negotiating with an enemy before. It was against everything the Varkshar stood for. Salzor's claws cracked the stone of his throne as he gripped it tightly. His first instinct was to execute the coward where he stood, but a darker thought crept into his mind. What if the general was right? What if these humans were stronger than the Varkshar? The meeting. For the first time in history, the Varkshar sent a diplomatic envoy. A single warship, unarmed, was dispatched to the outer edge of human space. The Varkshar emissary, High Lord Vrokar, was one of the most feared warriors in the Empire. He had led genocides. He had enslaved entire planets. He had never bowed to anyone. And yet, as he sat in his warship waiting for the humans to respond, he felt something he had never felt before. Unease. Then they arrived. The arrival of the Titans. At first, there was nothing but darkness. Then, out of the void, they came. Massive human warships, black as night, their surfaces lined with unreadable symbols and pulsing blue light. They didn't shimmer. They didn't roar with energy. They just existed, and their presence was terrifying. They didn't surround the Varkshar warship. They didn't need to. One ship alone was larger than Vrokar's entire fleet. Then, a message came through. A simple transmission. Speak. Vrokar swallowed. He had never once hesitated before speaking. But now he did. For the first time, he realized he was the prey. The terms of humanity. Vrokar stood tall, trying to summon his confidence. I am High Lord Vrokar of the Varkshar Empire. I come to discuss terms. The human voice that responded was calm, cold. Terms. The Varkshar have never discussed terms before. Vrokar stiffened. They were right. The Varkshar never negotiated. They conquered. We are willing to consider a ceasefire, Vrokar said carefully. The silence that followed was worse than any battle. Then the human finally spoke. No. Vrokar's blood ran cold. No. No. There will be no ceasefire. Vrokar clenched his fists. Then what do you want? The next words haunted him. Your surrender. The room felt like it had collapsed around him. Never in the history of the Varkshar had they surrendered to anyone. Vrokar clenched his jaws. That is unacceptable. The human voice remained calm. Then prepare for extinction. Vrokar felt something he never had before. Terror. The Varkshar's final decision. Vrokar returned to the Empire, shaken to his core. He knelt before Supreme Warlord Xalzor, delivering the message. The humans demand our surrender, he said quietly, or they will end us. Xalzor stood frozen. The room was silent. And then, the Supreme Warlord spoke. No, he whispered. Then, louder. No. He slammed his fists down, his rage shaking the throne room. I will not surrender. We will fight. We will unleash everything. The commanders cheered, but Vrokar felt only dread. He had looked into the eyes of humanity, and he knew they would not lose. The Varkshar had made a fatal mistake, and now humanity was coming for them. The Varkshar's biggest mistake. The Varkshar Empire had ruled the stars for thousands of years. They had faced rebellion and crushed it. They had fought wars and won them. They had never been forced onto the defensive. Until now, humanity had given them a simple choice: surrender or be erased from existence. Supreme Warlord Xalzor had made his decision. They would fight. He did not realize that this decision would lead to the greatest disaster in Varkshar history. A call to war. The Varkshar Empire gathered every last warship, every last soldier, every last resource for what they called the Great Reckoning. They would not go down without a fight. Across the empire, war factories roared to life, producing weapons at a speed never seen before. Elite warriors were trained day and night, ready to strike back at humanity. The entire might of the Varkshar was preparing for war. Massive dreadnoughts, capable of wiping out entire fleets, were called from deep space stations. Super weapons, thought to be legends, were activated for the first time in history. The Empire believed that this would be the greatest battle the galaxy had ever seen. They did not realize that it would not be a battle. It would be a massacre. The silent countdown. As the Varkshar prepared for war, humanity waited. They did not rush. They did not send fleets in a blind attack. They simply observed. High above the Varkshar capital world, beyond their scanners' reach, human stealth ships floated in the void. Watching, studying, calculating. Humanity's greatest strength was not just its firepower, it was its patience. The Varkshar had no idea that their every move was being tracked. They had no idea that the humans were letting them prepare, because it didn't matter. The outcome was already decided. The Empire moves. With their fleets ready, Supreme Warlord Xalzor gave the order. Attack. A massive armada, over 5,000 warships strong, launched into space, heading directly for human territory. They would wipe Earth from existence. They would show the galaxy that the Varkshar could not be defeated. Their fleets spread across space, their warriors preparing for the bloodbath to come. Then they saw it. At the edge of their sensors, a single human warship appeared. One ship against thousands. The Varkshar laughed. And then, in an instant, the entire fleet went blind. The death of the Varkshar Armada. Alarms screamed across every Varkshar warship. Their sensors failed. Their weapons failed. Their shields failed. They had no warning, no defense, and no escape. Before they could react, the human fleet emerged. Not from hyperspace, not from the distance, from nowhere. They appeared like ghosts from the void. Warships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Black, sleek, impossibly fast. And they did not hesitate. The humans did not send demands. They did not offer surrender. They simply attacked. Within seconds, the first 1,000 Varkshar warships were gone. Not damaged, not crippled. Gone. The second 1,000 never had time to react. Their engines shut down, their weapons useless, their crews screaming in confusion as human warships cut through them like paper. By the time Supreme Warlord Salzor realized what was happening, half his fleet was already destroyed, and humanity had not lost a single ship. The final stand of Salzor. On board the command ship, Salzor stood frozen. He had fought hundreds of battles. He had never been afraid. But this was not a battle. It was slaughter. His second in command, General Drekar, turned to him, his voice shaking. "My lord, we must retreat." Salzor refused to believe it. "No," he growled. "This is impossible. They are not gods. They are just humans." But his words meant nothing, because even as he spoke, human ships were closing in. Salzor watched in horror as the flagship of his fleet was torn apart in a single shot. A single shot. One moment, it existed. The next, it was atomized. This was not war. This was execution. The message that shook the galaxy. Realizing the battle was lost, Salzor did something he never thought he would do. He ran. His personal escape ship, one of the few vessels still functional, flowed into deep space, leaving the Varkshar fleet to die. The battle lasted less than 30 minutes. 5,000 Varkshar warships were destroyed. The human fleet remained untouched. The galaxy watched in silent terror. Then the humans sent a transmission to every empire, every ruler, every warlord. The Varkshar thought they ruled the stars. Now, they are nothing. Let this be a warning. The age of human mercy is over. Every species in the galaxy realized something that day. The Varkshar had made a terrible mistake. They had challenged humanity. And now, the real war was about to begin. The ultimate battle begins. The galaxy was silent. For thousands of years, the Varkshar had ruled through fear, destruction, and power. They had never met an enemy they could not break. Never seen a war they could not win. But now, they had faced something far worse than defeat. Annihilation. Their greatest fleet, their most powerful warriors, their legendary war machines, all gone, and humanity had done it without losing a single ship. Now, there was only one battle left, the final stand of the Varkshar Empire, and humanity was coming. The homeworld prepares for the end. On the surface of Varzok Prime, the homeworld of the Varkshar Empire, the streets were filled with warriors, soldiers, and terrified civilians. For the first time in their history, the Varkshar were afraid. They had spent centuries conquering others. They had believed they were the apex of the galaxy. Now, they realized the truth. They had been small. They had been weak. They had been nothing. Their war fleets had been shattered. Their greatest warriors had been slaughtered. And now, the humans were coming for them. Supreme Warlord Salzor, once the most feared leader in the galaxy, stood at the top of his war palace, looking out over his crumbling empire. He clenched his claws into fists. His rage burned, but beneath it, fear lurked. They are not gods, he growled to himself. He had to believe that. But in his heart he knew they were something worse. They were hunters, and he was their prey. The arrival of the end. The human fleet arrived without warning. There was no declaration of war, no demand for surrender, just silence. Then the sky above Varzok Prime turned black. Hundreds of human warships descended from orbit, each one large enough to cast a shadow over entire cities. Their designs were impossibly advanced, their weapons already primed. They did not move like an attacking army. They moved like executioners. The Varkshar warriors on the ground looked up in terror. They had fought thousands of wars. They had destroyed entire civilizations, but they had never seen anything like this. They knew what was coming, and they could do nothing to stop it. The last stand. Supreme Warlord Xalzor refused to surrender. "This is our home," he snarled at his generals. "We will fight, to the last warrior, to the last breath." His commanders nodded, but their eyes were hollow. They had already lost, and they knew it. Still, the Varkshar gathered every remaining warship, every remaining warrior, every weapon left in their arsenal. They loaded the planetary defense cannons. They set up energy shields around their cities. They prepared for one final battle. It would be glorious. It would be the end of their empire. The first and final shots. The Varkshar defense fleet rose from the surface of Varzok Prime, charging toward the black wall of human warships. They fired everything they had. Lasers, plasma cannons, planet-cracking missiles. It didn't matter. Not a single human ship was damaged. Then the humans responded. They did not fire missiles. They did not unleash massive explosions. Instead, their weapons were precise, targeted, surgical, ruthless. Within minutes, the entire Varkshar defense fleet was gone, and the humans had still not lost a single ship. The battle in space was over before it even began. Now only the planet remained. The storm descends. The sky shattered as human warships entered the atmosphere. For the first time in history, Varzok Prime was under siege. The planet shook as human forces descended from the sky like gods of war. Elite Varkshar warriors, once the most feared soldiers in the galaxy, rushed to meet them. They were slaughtered. The humans did not fight like soldiers. They fought like ghosts. They appeared from the shadows. They moved faster than the eye could follow. They killed with terrifying precision. Varkshar warriors, who had never known fear, who had never backed down from a fight, ran. It was not a battle. It was a purge. Xalzor's last stand. Inside his war palace, Supreme Warlord Xalzor watched the destruction unfold. His warriors were dying. His cities were falling. His empire was dead. Still, he did not surrender. He stood in his throne room, holding his massive war axe, waiting for the inevitable. The doors shattered inward, and then they entered. Not an army, not a battalion, just one human. A single soldier, dressed in black armor, walked into the warlord's throne room alone. Xalzor growled. "I expected an army." The human said nothing. Xalzor lifted his axe. "Come then, human. Face me. Show me if you are worthy." The human tilted his head slightly. Then he spoke. "You're not worth an army." And then, before Xalzor could even blink, the warlord was dead. The end of the empire. With the death of Xalzor, the last remnants of the Varkshar Empire collapsed. Those who tried to fight were hunted down. Those who tried to flee were captured. The mighty Varkshar race, once the most feared species in the galaxy, had been wiped from history. And the galaxy trembled. Because if humanity could destroy the strongest empire in the galaxy, then no one was safe. The fall of the unstoppable. The Varkshar Empire was no more. Their war fleets were destroyed. Their greatest warriors were slain. Their rulers were executed. For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy had no apex predator. And the one who had dethroned them humanity. But the war was not over. Because even in death, the shadow of the Varkshar still loomed over the stars. The remnants of a dead empire, the Varkshar were known for one thing above all else: conquest. They had controlled thousands of planets, billions of lives. Their empire had stretched across half the known galaxy. And now, their empire was leaderless, lawless, and on the edge of total collapse. Varkshar generals who had escaped the massacre scattered into deep space. Their once loyal armies turned into rogue warbands. Entire planets, once controlled under the iron fist of the Varkshar, descended into chaos. Slavers, warlords, and mercenaries rose from the ruins like vultures. The galaxy was on fire, and at the center of it all, humanity stood victorious. But victory was only the beginning. Now, they had to decide what came next. The debate of the century. Back on Earth, a meeting unlike any other in history was taking place. The United Terran Coalition, humanity's most powerful governing body, was gathered in a massive war chamber deep beneath the surface of Luna Base. The question before them was simple. What do we do with the remains of the Varkshar Empire? There were three factions. 1. The Rebuilders. Led by Chancellor Elena Vasquez, this faction believed humanity should take control of the Varkshar's old territories. The galaxy has lived under tyranny for too long, she argued. We have the power to bring order, peace, and stability. If we do nothing, warlords and criminals will take over, and the suffering will continue. They wanted to install human rule, guiding the newly freed planets toward a better future. A noble idea, but not everyone agreed. 2. The Isolationists. Led by Admiral Marcus Greer, the isolationists wanted nothing to do with the fallen empire. We are not conquerors, he said. We have defended ourselves. That is all. What happens next is not our concern. Their argument was simple. Stay out of it. Let the galaxy solve its own problems. But some believed this was a mistake. 3. The Enforcers. The third faction, led by Director Alan Cross of Earth's Intelligence Division, believed in one thing: control. We have just proven that humanity is the most powerful force in the galaxy, Cross said. If we leave now, we invite chaos. If we let warlords rise, they will one day come for us. His plan: a human military occupation of key planets, strategic control over trade, technology, and war resources. Not a new empire, but a silent hand guiding the galaxy. It was the most ruthless plan, and perhaps the most effective. The choice that changed history. After hours of debate, arguments, and shouting, the leaders of humanity made their choice. They would not conquer. They would not abandon. They would enforce. A new directive was issued. Human forces would occupy key former Varkshar worlds. Trade routes would be placed under Terran oversight. No warlord, no pirate fleet, no mercenary force would be allowed to rise. The message was clear. Humanity was not taking over the galaxy. They were becoming its guardians. And anyone who challenged that would suffer the same fate as the Varkshar. The galaxy reacts. The galaxy had been watching. When humanity destroyed the Varkshar, the other empires had stayed silent. Now, with human occupation of key planets, they could stay silent no longer. The diplomats. Some empires, like the Zephyrians and the Kilari Commonwealth, saw the wisdom in humanity's actions. They welcomed Terran oversight. They sought alliances, and they feared what would happen if they stood in opposition. The opponents. Not all species accepted this new order. The Drakar Dominion, a powerful militaristic empire, called humanity a plague. They are no different than the Varkshar, the Drakar Emperor declared. They come with words of peace, but behind them stand warships. Others, like the Tseric Consortium, a powerful trade empire, feared that humanity's growing power would threaten their influence. These factions began plotting in the shadows. Because while the Varkshar had been a threat to the galaxy, humanity was an even bigger one. The Varkshar return. In the middle of all this, one rumor began to spread. A whisper, a ghost story, a single transmission intercepted from deep space, a signal that shouldn't exist. Asterisk, asterisk. To all surviving Varkshar, the war is not over. Humanity has won a battle. But we will win the war. The true Varkshar still live. And we will return. Asterisk, asterisk. The transmission came from a sector of space that should have been empty, a place where nothing lived. But now, something was there. Something waiting. Something watching. And humanity had no idea what was coming next. The beginning of a new war. As humanity secured its new role in the galaxy, forces in the shadows moved against them. Old enemies, new threats, secrets the Varkshar had hidden. The war was not over. It had only just begun. A new galactic order. The war was over. The Varkshar, once the apex predators of the galaxy, had been destroyed. But war has a way of leaving shadows behind. And in the dark corners of the galaxy, whispers began to spread. The Varkshar were gone. But something far worse was coming. The silence before the storm. The galaxy had never known peace. For thousands of years, war was a constant. Empires rose and fell. Alliances were made and broken. And the strong crushed the weak. But after the fall of the Varkshar, everything changed. For the first time in history, there was no single ruler of the stars. No empire sat at the top of the galactic food chain. Instead, humanity had taken control, not as conquerors, but as enforcers. Humanity's iron grip. Human war fleets patrolled the hyperlanes. No warlord, pirate, or rogue empire dared to challenge them. Entire planets that once belonged to the Varkshar were now under human protection. To some species, this was a blessing. To others, it was a warning. The Zephyrians signed an alliance with humanity, ensuring trade and peace. The Kilari Commonwealth welcomed human oversight, knowing it meant stability. The Tseric Consortium, the wealthiest traders in the galaxy, feared humanity's growing power. The Drakir Dominion outright called them tyrants, the enemies in the shadows. Humanity's victory over the Varkshar had not gone unnoticed. In the deepest corners of space, a new enemy was watching. They had seen the fall of the Varkshar. They had seen humanity's unstoppable power. And they knew they had to act. The Varkshar survivors. Some believed that the Varkshar were truly extinct. But they were wrong. Deep in the unknown sectors of space, beyond the reach of even humanity, the true Varkshar remained. Not the warlords, not the generals, the original leaders, the ones who had vanished centuries ago. They had not been killed. They had been waiting for a time when the galaxy would be vulnerable. And now they saw their chance. One final Varkshar war fleet remained, hidden, gathering strength, building weapons unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. They had watched their empire fall. Now, they would rise again. The betrayal. Among the many empires still standing, one made a choice. The Drakir Dominion, an aggressive and warlike species, had always resented the Varkshar for their dominance. But now, they feared something even worse. Humanity. The Drakir leaders knew that if they did not act, humans would rule the galaxy forever. And so, they reached out. To the only force that could challenge humanity. To the Varkshar survivors. A secret alliance. In a hidden system, far from human eyes, a meeting took place. The leader of the Drakir Dominion, High Warlord Krellin, stood face to face with the last surviving Varkshar Supreme Commander. Krellin sneered. I never thought I'd see the day when a Varkshar would be hiding in the dark like a wounded animal. The Varkshar leader did not react. His eyes glowed with something far worse than rage. Cold calculation. We do not hide, the Varkshar said. We wait. Krellin crossed his arms. The humans are too powerful. Alone, neither of us can stop them. But together. The Varkshar smiled. A slow, terrifying expression. Together, He said, "We will burn their world to the ground." The greatest enemies of the past were now allies, and humanity had no idea what was coming. The first strike. 1 month later, it happened. On the edge of human space, a Terran colony went silent. The planet Gideon 4, home to 5 million humans, was gone. Not destroyed. Not conquered. Erased. Human warships arrived to investigate and found nothing but ashes. There were no survivors. There was no warning. Just a single message, burned into the remains of a city. A message written in Varkshar blood. "We are not finished." Panic spread through human-controlled space. Had the Varkshar survived? Was this a new enemy? No one knew. And that was the most terrifying part. Humanity's response. The United Terran Coalition gathered once more. For years, they had been the enforcers, the guardians of the galaxy. But now, they were under attack. Humanity's leaders did not hesitate. "We will not be hunted," declared Admiral Marcus Greer. "We will not be intimidated," said Director Alan Cross. Chancellor Elena Vasquez stood and spoke the words that would mark the beginning of the next great war. "They think we are merciful. They think we will hesitate. They think we fear them. They are wrong. We are coming." Across human space, warships were mobilized. Weapons more powerful than anything used against the Varkshar were activated. And for the first time since their rise to power, humanity was on the hunt. This would not be a war. This would be extermination. The final war begins. The galaxy held its breath. The Varkshar had returned. And this time, they were not alone. The Drakar Dominion had thrown their power behind them. A war unlike any other in history was about to begin. And the question was no longer who would win. The question was, would anything survive?